Hi, Calvary Kids. Pastor Ruth here again. I'm in the youth center again, but I figured I'd give you guys a little bit new scenery. This is kind of our setup that we have for the kids on Sunday mornings. When they get here, everyone's on their own team. It's super fun. We have a great time, and I am so excited to be here with you today sharing about the Israelites and Moses after they escaped through the Red Sea that God parted. Super cool. I love that story. If you're a parent in the room and you haven't watched Pastor Dan's sermon from last week, I want to encourage you to, because it was so good. It really spoke to me. I mean, it was the kind of message that I really feel like I'm going to carry with me during this current season of life with me and my family. So I want to encourage you to watch that. But then now we are talking about what happens after the Red Sea, because sometimes we read the stories and we hear the stories and we watch the movies. And if you watched the movie, the cartoon that has to do with Moses, Prince of Egypt, I believe it's called, it's an awesome story, but it ends after the Red Sea, which, you can't just continuously make a long movie. I understand there's got to be an ending point, but the story doesn't end for Moses and the Israelites there. Actually, the story continues and God does another really awesome miracle. But first, let me ask you a question. Do you, in your house, think you have everything you need? Do you think your grown-ups have given you everything you need? Do you have shelter? Do you have clothing? Do you have food? Even if it's not your favorite kind of food? Well, today we're going to talk about a story where God provides everything that the Israelites could need. And it does involve some food that maybe wasn't their favorite, but it came about in a really cool way, and we're going to talk about that. But our faith factor for today is God provides for me. Because even when it seems really tough, God provides. So we're going to dive right in. But before I do that, I just want to say go Browns. How exciting that last week they won. I got to say, didn't expect it. I really thought we would be done with the, fan week. I thought we would be done, but the Browns are still going, and it's awesome. I'm excited to see what they do today. At this point, probably when you're watching this, the game will already be done. But either way, it's exciting. But I want to ask you, what is the longest car ride you've ever been on? For me, I'm trying to think. I went on a car ride. I went from Ohio all the way to Florida. And we left at like 3 a.m. Oh, man. And how long did it take us to get there? We left at 3 a.m. and I want to say we got there around 6 or 7. I could be off on that math. I'm not really sure. Maybe we got there later. But I just remember it was the longest car ride of my life. And it felt like it took forever. And, when you're on a long car ride, you're probably not happy and super fun and bubbly and, dancing to music the whole time, right? Car rides are kind of exciting in the beginning, and then they're kind of exciting at the end. But in the middle, it's a little rough, right? When you leave your destination, you're all hype, you're excited for wherever you're going, your trip, your vacation, your school trip. But then, when you've been in the car for 10 hours, it's a little rough. Things that were funny at the beginning aren't funny anymore, and people are crouching into your space, and you can't stretch out your legs, and your siblings looking over your shoulder and looking out your window, even though they have their own window to look at. And somebody's eating all the snacks, and somebody's got to go to the bathroom, and car rides can be tough. Long car rides can be tough. And the Israelites kind of found themselves in that spot too. They didn't have cars back then, but after they crossed the Red Sea, they then had to wander through the wilderness. And so that's where we pick up today. And so what are some things that you guys have ever said on a long trip? There's the classic, "Are we there yet?" A classic. I say that all the time. I need to use the restroom. Where are the snacks? I'm hungry. Why is it taking so long? Can you tell, my brother or sister to stop coming over into my space? They have their own space. No, you can't borrow my headphones. Like, we have all these things we say. And it can be tiring, and we can become irritated. And that is what happened to the Israelites. They started complaining and grumbling. They got irritated because they were wandering in the wilderness for so long, and they got really hungry. And so they actually, at one point, they turned to Moses and they said, "Man, it would have been better for us to have stayed in Egypt and died as slaves than to die out here wandering and hungry." And man, that's tough. They really hated the situation they were in. They just wanted to go back at that point. That's crazy to me. But I mean, sometimes, you look back on a situation and you think, man, I was being a little dramatic. I was being a little crazy there. I didn't have to go that wild. But in the moment, those emotions feel so real. And so we're going to open our Bibles to Exodus 16. And I'm going to read along with you something the Israelites were saying, okay? So in Exodus 16, we're going to start in verse 3. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we at least sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." That's pretty intense. They're basically telling Moses, hey, you set us free, you and God set us free, but at least there we could eat, and out here there's no food in the wilderness, and we're going to starve to death, and this is all going to be for nothing. And that awesome, cool miracle that just happened with the Red Sea parting doesn't even matter because we're going to die from hunger. Now, do you guys think God was going to let them die from hunger out there in the wilderness after he just did an awesome miracle to save them? No. I mean, if you think about it logically, he's going to find a way for them to survive. But it doesn't change the fact that the Israelites' stomachs were growling. Doesn't change the fact that after, walking around for so long, I mean, what are some of the things you think they would complain about? Maybe they can't complain about the windows rolling up and down, but, maybe they just talked about how they had sore feet and they were so thirsty, and maybe the sun was beating down on them and they were so hot during the day and so cold at night and they were just so hungry. So God did something for them. And so we're going to keep reading in verse 4. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So basically, God is saying, look, I hear the complaints. I hear the struggles. I'm not going to leave you out there to starve to death. And so God actually did another really cool miracle. How many of you guys, I wish I could talk to you guys and see you raise your hands. How many of you guys have ever seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? It's a real fun cartoon. There may be 2 or 3 of them now, I'm not sure. But in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, what happens? Well, food falls from the sky, right? And that actually all starts because of this machine, and there's this whole backstory. But whenever I watched Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs for the first time, the very first thing I thought of was this Bible story, where God made manna from heaven rain down, and God basically was providing them food in a miraculous way. But there were a couple of rules, right? What were the rules here? They had to go out each day and gather enough just for that day, just enough for their family. So it wasn't like they were supposed to go out and hoard a bunch of food. They weren't supposed to gather it all in a big pile and keep it for themselves, because God was going to provide for them each day. This wasn't just okay, well, I'll sprinkle some food down for you guys, and then, that should be enough, one and done, we're over. God was going to provide for them each day. And so they were supposed to gather just enough for them, just enough for their families each day. And then on the 6th day, so our Saturday, God was telling them to gather twice as much and prepare the food ahead of time so that on Sunday they could rest and they didn't have to do any work and they could honor the Sabbath, which is really cool. And I think the awesome thing about this is God provided enough food, enough manna from heaven for each family. He knew each person that was out there in the wilderness, each individual Israelite. He had food come down from heaven that was specifically for them. And he was going to do that every day. And I think that's really cool. God provided for each person there and each family, and he knew exactly what they needed, and he didn't give them less than that so that they'd have to fight over scraps. He didn't give them more than that because he was going to provide for them every single day. They didn't have to worry about one day God just not showing up and not having any food to eat, because God was going to show up and be there for them every day. And I think that's really cool. And God is going to provide for you and me just like that. My family, my parents and my siblings who they don't live with me. They live in another town, but we're going through a season in our life where we're really going to have to trust God that he's going to provide. Because I'm going to be honest with you guys, a lot of families has been hit really hard over the past year with COVID happening and things being shut down, and businesses are finding ways that they're trying to find ways to stay open, and they can't make money if everything's shut down, and it's been really hard on a lot of families. And we may be thinking, oh, 2021 is here, it's going to be awesome, we're not going to face any challenges. But the truth is, there are still struggles. And this year so far, my family's been hit, and my dad actually lost his job, which is really tough, and that's scary. And I don't know about you, maybe your family have been hit with some of these things too. It's scary to think that, our parents or our grown-ups could lose their job, and that all of a sudden we may not be provided for. But what can we learn from this story? This story shows us that God will always provide for us, and He'll always give us exactly what we need. And we don't have to worry about trying to, make as much as we can right now, because who knows when God's going to stop providing. God didn't stop providing for the Israelites. They made it. They survived. They had food, and they eventually got to where they were going, and God didn't stop providing for them. And so maybe you're in a situation like my family, where you're struggling a little bit, and COVID's hit you guys hard, and life is difficult. I just want to remind you that God is going to show up, and He's going to provide. And maybe it's not going to be as crazy as food falling from the sky, but He can show up in some crazy, awesome ways. And I think this is a good reminder too, if you or your family is struggling and you need some extra help, please don't hesitate to reach out to the church. You can reach out to the office with Bridget, or you can reach out to me. As a church, we want to support our families, and we want to be there for you guys any way that we can. So whether that's just praying for the situation, or whether that's helping with groceries, or whatever we can, we want to be there for you guys. So if you need anything, if you need some extra help, just please don't hesitate to reach out. If you would be praying for my family, that would be great. I would really appreciate that. I know God's going to provide, and my dad's going to find a new job, and it's all going to be okay. And I don't live with them, so I'm not as feeling the effects of it, but just pray for my family. But I think, this has been a good reminder for me, and I'm going to make sure that I share this video with my family, just so that they can be reminded too that God is always going to provide. So thank you guys for watching. I'm excited to keep talking about this story next week, and to be doing it alongside the youth and the adults as we're all kind of walking through this. And so I think it'll be really fun. I'm excited for the next couple weeks, and it was great hanging out with you. Hopefully the Browns won. If they didn't win, it maybe be a little sad, but at least they made it to the playoffs. So you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next week.